Hi sewing friends, welcome to my sewing room. My name is Beth and it's nice to be with you today. Today I'm working on a new quilt based on my last video. I made a brick wall quilt block right here. And Karen asked me, what if we sort of moved the rectangles just a little bit and made them sort of like a stair step effect. So that's what I'm working on today. Thank you for commenting, Karen, and it was fun to think about ways that I could go about doing this. So today I'm using blue scraps, lots of blue solids, and then a lot of blue prints. Let's get going. This is what you will need to make our quilt block today. I'm going to be making chunks just like this using 2.5-inch strips and then cutting them into 5-inch wide pieces. So I'm starting with my blue prints. This is a blue and yellow check, and then I have a variety of blue solids for the other side. So I'm going to cut my strip 2.5 inches. This is already a straight edge here on this fabric. If the edge is not straight, you want to straighten that up. And then take your two pieces and sew them together. If you are using a fat quarter, you should be able to get 4 pieces, and that's how many I like using in this quilt I'm working on right now. So take your strip that you've sewn together, just like my last video. This is going to be just a slightly different pattern, and then I'm going to be cutting these in 5 inches, 5-inch pieces, and I'll need 4. Now I will say that you don't have to use 4 pieces. I like the unity it kind of gives the quilt. You could use all different chunks. These don't have to match. You don't have to have 4 alike together. That's the way I'm doing it. But you could just use a variety, and it's your choice. That's the wonderful thing about quilting. We can make all those decisions and make it our own. Here are all my blocks on the design wall ready to go. And I just started by rows. I started at the top on the right and put them all in order. And I went over to my machine and started sewing them together in a long row. I made sure that I remembered where the top is by putting a pin in that top piece so that I wouldn't get mixed up as I went along. So that's all there is to that, just a long row of my little 5-inch chunks, all in blues. This will be a boy quilt. I make graduation quilts for high school seniors every year, so this is a nice beginning for quilts for next year. I always like having some boy quilts ready to go. Ideas for boy quilts anyway. I continued on sewing my rows together, and then as I put them back on the design wall, I moved it down just a little bit so that the seams were not together like you see in the picture right there. So I'll make sort of a stair-step design like we talked about earlier. So I'm going to keep sewing, I'll do some pressing, and then I'll sew those long pieces together. So when I had my rows ready to go, I pinned them together, putting each seam in the middle of the next rectangle. So they're centered, and they're not centered exactly. So if you took a ruler and went from one seam across a rectangle to the next seam, I'm sure they won't match up. I'm just eyeballing those centers because I don't think anybody will be measuring and making sure that those lines are straight across. But it does help to pin, and just eyeball the center seam, the seam into the center of the rectangle that is next to the seam. And then when I got to the top, when I was done, I went to the top and I trimmed off that little tiny bit. And there it is after it's been sewn together. It makes a nice pattern, very different from the other one we made last time we were together, but it's amazing how one little change can just change the whole look of the quilt. So I hope that you'll think about ideas to switch around blocks as you make your quilt. It's fun to experiment and see what you can come up with. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next time.